Hello, everyone. So good to see you all this evening. We're going to start with some interpretation instructions and then proceed with the evening.
Hola, muy buenas noches. Vamos a comenzar con unas instrucciones para la interpretación y vamos a comenzar con la reunión. En este momento, si no se han puesto su diapositivo para escuchar, es el momento y el resto de la reunión va a ser simultánea. If you have not put on your earpiece, the rest of the meeting will be simultaneous, primarily English to Spanish right now. So our Spanish speakers are the ones that need interpretation, but every single one of our English and Spanish speakers will need a device when we go out into breakouts, and it'll be more than anything to make sure that we can all hear each other. But everyone who speaks Spanish good? You can hear interpretation? Is our interpreter good? She doing a good job? Interpretation? Who is interpreting right now? ¿Quién está interpretando ahorita? Probando? 1, 2, 3. Probando. Can you walk around the device to make sure that it's connected? The beauty of technology. La belleza de la tecnología. Deberían de estar en el canal 2, todos. And English only speakers might be on channel 1, so you shouldn't hear interpretation. Okay, let's walk around. Make sure it's not flashing. Estefania? Is it connecting? We're good? Can we make sure the others connect? Perfecto. Yes, we're hearing. 1, 2. We're good? Awesome. Yay. Interpreting equipment sometimes falls asleep too, but we're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Frena. Well, welcome everyone to our 65th Community Steering Committee meeting here in Fresno. We're so glad that you each have taken some time out of your busy schedules to join us here tonight. We're so grateful. Tonight, the AD staff and the Hard-Earned Company facilitation team. Not working? Okay. One moment, please. Thank you. Well, as we get ourselves situated here. Well, yes, thank you so much, everyone. We're so glad you're joining us here tonight. So yes, the AD staff and the Hard-Earned Company facilitation teams have organized clearly a slightly different structure than what we typically see for our virtual meetings on Zoom. So we are all here to improve air quality by reducing emissions. And so we would just like to reiterate that if you have not already, please pick up your name tag at the registration table here. It's really important for us to make sure that we have our registration sign-in sheets accurate for stipend follow-up. And if you're a member of the public and you don't have a name tag, we have blank name tags for you. And we want to make sure that you get one. And so please let us know if you don't see your name. We want to make sure you get that. For the bulk of our time today together, we'll be engaging in a SERP measure implementation exercise, during which you will have the opportunity to learn and provide additional feedback on the SERP measures raised in last month's meeting. And in this space, we'll be continuing to build on that meeting to continue discussing the following SERP measures, which include vegetative barriers and urban greening, residential lawn and garden, and public fleet vehicles. Our hope is that if you were able to join us anytime after 4:30 to this point, you will feel equipped with some key foundational understanding around each SERP measure, and consequently also feel prepared to better engage in our conversation together today. And if not, we hope to bring you along the way. So we look forward to a robust evening ahead here. And to launch our time, I'm now going to invite up Nancy to open us with some opening remarks.
Thank you, Michaela. Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm very happy that everybody's here. My name is Nancy. I am your South Central Community Liaison. I have seen plenty of faces around here, but I know mostly your voices because many of the screens are black. I am very just excited just to have you all here so we can bring a sense of community back into these sort of organizations. I know that there's a big disconnect with government agencies and the public, and that's something that I hope that we can change. And so I hope that everybody has taken the time to kind of just go around the room and just view all the measure posters that we have along the wall. This is a perfect time to ask questions. It is a very intimate space. It is also a very safe space to ask away. We are here to answer any questions. And I also want to thank Julio from CCEJN, Central California Environmental Justice Network, for being here today, and all the other staff. We also had Andrina from the city of Fresno today. And so please enjoy the food that we have gotten for you. And of course, I can't forget Naomi Martinez as well, for making things possible and happen for the Tree Fresno. Please enjoy yourselves, eat, mingle, ask us questions, and I am here if you ever need anything. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nancy. Well, with that, it is time to now dive into the content for our first update. And so that'll be urban greening and vegetative barriers. So we'll still be in kind of this large group kind of setting for that. And yeah, we'd just love to follow up with our friends, Julio and Eileen, with some updates around this. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm very happy to be with Julio to share the good news of some of the things that you have been asking for. I think the highlight of our report will be today that finally after November, December, January, February, after 5 months, waiting for the city of Fresno to give us a response for the residents like Lilia's neighbors and everybody that is sitting in that table that have said that they don't only want trees in their backyards, they want trees in their sidewalks, outside their homes. And finally, that request has been approved, and Julio will give the details of where are the first streets that will see trees planted. So please give them a round of applause because they made this possible, advocating for trees in their streets. The other big item is that we will need your help for an event that is happening in Edison and Computech. We will need a lot of hands, so that's going to be Saturday, May 25th. So you have some weeks to plan. We will provide the gloves, the tools, but just bring a lot of energy because we will be planting a lot of trees, again, in another neighborhood that was in dire need. But now I'm going to pass it to Julio, who has been hustling and visiting a lot of streets and neighborhoods so that he can update us how many people he had talked to, how many trees are we going to be planting, and we had planted since the last time we met.
Gracias, Naomi. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Thank you all for being here. My name is Julio Lopez, and I work for the Central California Environmental Justice Network, CCEJN, and I am the Urban Greening Coordinator. And I've got this great opportunity to help residents in the AB 617 area with 5-gallon property trees and for the 15-gallon walkway trees. So I'm going to give you an update on some of the things that I've been kind of doing. I'm going to slow down. Okay, so we've visited about 229 residents. I've been doing canvassing for the past 3 to 4 months. We've gotten about 20 to 25 people who are interested in trees on their property. We are going to be planting about 15 trees on the 18th, 5-gallon trees. So if you're interested in being part of that event, just email me or text me and I will get in contact with you and give you more details. So As Nayamin was saying, one of the zip codes that we're going to start off with the 15-gallon trees is the 93702 area. We're going to move over to 93706, which is on the west side of Fresno, and we will be planting, actually the city will be planting the 15-gallon trees in those two zip codes. As I stated, we got 15-gallon trees being planted on the 18th. Naomi mentioned another event going on the 25th. Some of the organizations that I'm currently working on right now is a church on the west side of Fresno called Feed My Shepherds. And Seventh-day Adventist Church, we're planting 17 trees there. Weber Park, we're planting about 14 trees there on Wednesday of this month. So as you can probably gather, we're fairly busy with planting. Our planting season starts in October and it ends sometime in May and June. So July and August tends to be very hot, so we're not going to be putting any trees on the ground, but we'll be working with our partners to generate more interest and more tree adopters. We're currently working with Regency Homes. Producers Dairy is having a family worker-oriented event this weekend. I will be there to provide information about our tree program at that event. I have some information that Mona shared with me, but I'd like for her to present that information because I won't be able to answer specific questions regarding the Green Barrier project that she's currently working on, but she's got some great news to share with you at our next meeting. Okay. Who does this go to? And I will be available if you have any questions regarding the program.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, are there any questions in regards to anything that we just heard?
No question, but I just want a special shout out to Julio and Nayamin and the Tree Fresno partners and all of the people on both teams. I've been to a tree planting event and it was so much fun, so well organized. And if you know nothing about how to plant trees or you think it might be overwhelming, they help you so much. And you learn about planting trees. You learn the proper ways to dig the hole, the proper way to maintain the tree. I learned about staking trees and realized that my trees were staked improperly in my backyard from that event. So it really is great. And it's also just such a great, fun event with community. I met so many wonderful people and just had a really lovely morning. So thank you so much for inviting us and definitely encourage you all. I know a lot of you will be there at this upcoming event.
Thank you. I think one of the things that we have learned too is that planting trees is obviously have many benefits, but one of them is building community. So I think that it has been a multi-generational effort where we see children and elders and adults and people of all ages coming together to plant a tree that they, it's for the future generations. We might not, especially us that are, or me that I'm older, I might not see the tree grow as tall as it's going to get, but the fact that kids are getting engaged and that they see it. There was also a tree planting in Calowa. When was that, Julio? Yeah. So please reach out because we would love to come to your street, to your school, to your church to plant more trees. Because as I said, it's a community building effort as well. Thank you.
¿Quién me va a traducir?
Ok, buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Lidia Becerril, vivo en el Distrito 5 de aquí del Condado de Fresno. Más que nada quiero agradecer a Nayamini y a todo su equipo porque ha hecho un fabuloso trabajo. Estuvimos pidiendo a las residentes que adoptaran un árbol adentro de sus propiedades. Lamentablemente ellos quieren árboles frutales en la parte de adentro, no los quieren en la parte de adentro no los quieren plantar. Entonces, gracias Nayamin por el equipo que tuviste para el trabajo, trabajar con la ciudad para que aprobaran que estos árboles fueran sombras para nuestros, aparte de nuestros estudiantes que caminan por la calle, sea para nuestros autos. Yo tuve una experiencia la semana pasada.
Is everyone on channel 2 right now, or are some on channel 1? Testing. Wonderful. After we test, then we have problems still. Después de calar todo el equipo, también estamos teniendo problemas. Okay, interpreters, can we go around and switch everyone to channel 2 right now? It's on 2. And can you hear? Are you on channel 2? But I can hear. And you can't hear.
I'm so sorry.
No, es okay. Me robaron la inspiración. Sí.
Quieren que se te olvide, pero no se va a olvidar.
Ya. Es que es verdad.
Sí, ya puedo. Los árboles que habían por la primera y su lado los quitaron para que no se, los de la calle no se afectaran. Quieren poner y los quitan. Los tumbaron.
Mientras que no saquen el audífono de los dispositivos o le piquen el botón del medio, se apagan o se desconectan. Así es que sirve no moverlo, ya están acomodados.
Disculpen, se me fue la inspiración. No se crean, no se crean. Como les decía, la semana pasada tuve una experiencia familiar. Lamentablemente estuve 5 días en el hospital de Santa Inés y la vista que me tocó hacia el norte era hermoso. Era hermoso, veía en lugar de mirar casas, miraba puros árboles. Cuando me ha tocado lamentablemente visitar el hospital del comunitario, lo que miro son puras casas vacías, no hay sombras, la verdad. Entonces, el mirar el norte y el sur se ve la diferencia hasta en eso. Falta de parques, falta de áreas verdes, falta de todo. Y ahorita con esto que están trabajando, con el proyecto de planta un árbol y adóptalo, para mí es genial. Genial. Lamentablemente a mí el año pasado me quitaron el único árbol que tenía en mi patio de afuera, pero este año estoy adoptando 5. Entonces quitaron uno y voy a tener 5. Y eso es bueno. Ya, entonces yo pienso que todas las familias necesitamos más sombras. Como repetí al principio, nuestros niños caminan muchas millas para llegar a su educación y esas millas las caminan bajo sol. Entonces es importantísimo que estos niños caminen, antes que nada protegidos de los rayos solares, y es importante que van caminando con eso. Pero no olvidemos que tenemos que trabajar, que la comunidad, aparte de que ya está plantado ese árbol, lo adoptemos también como vecinos y también ayudemos a que este árbol crezca sano. Esa es nuestra responsabilidad también como vecinos. Gracias.
Sí, uno de los problemas que estábamos platicando con Julio es que yo vivo en uno de los apartamentos de la GD y entonces ellos no dejan plantar árboles porque no quieren gastar agua. Hay muchos apartamentos y casas de ellos que no tienen árboles, no tienen, o sea, se mira todo seco, todo por no querer gastar agua. Es lo que no quieren ellos, por eso también no dejan plantar árboles. Entonces es un reto para nosotros la comunidad porque no podemos plantar donde queremos tener verde. Es por eso que sus áreas pues están muy feas, la verdad, a comparación de Clovis o otros lugares. Gracias.
Thank you, Estela, for that comment. And that is true. And that's why we were delighted when, thanks to the leadership of Mona, we were able to find an apartment complex owner that is willing to help us, let us plant those trees. So our hope is that it's like a snowball, right? We start with one, and then probably a next one says, oh, it wasn't too hard. I didn't have to pay anything. I didn't have to do any work. And that the word spreads, and that more companies become more, supportive of these efforts. So we are willing to go and talk to these companies, to these owners, and it doesn't hurt to ask. Some will say yes, some will say no, but at least we will try. So if you live in an apartment and you want us to approach the managers or the owners, just reach out to Julio or me and we will do it.
Thank you, Lilia, Estela. Thank you so much. Yeah, what other questions are coming up for you?
Yeah, Eric Payne, a CSC resident member.
So,
How's this? Sound good? Thumbs up? All right. So I guess my question is, this is a staff question. So what 3 CERT measures are you most proud of in terms of accomplishing to this point? And then I guess what 3 CERT measures would you say there could be some improvement on? Yeah, staff, whoever wants to answer the question.
Thank you, Eric. I imagine this is different for every single person in this room, which is kind of exciting. I'm Jessica Olson. It's been a minute since I've been to a Fresno meeting, but that doesn't mean I'm not plugged in and tracking kind of the progress and CERT measures. I think one of the, maybe I'll just say globally, so that maybe not staff by staff, but I would love to sit with each one of you and have this conversation, and feel free to ping any one of our staff and ask the same questions. I actually love this. The urban greening and vegetative barriers, I'm going to call them one because they feel like a similar measure, certainly is one. I think for a couple of reasons. One, it is the measure that I heard the most from all of you when we prioritized about making it happen. It's also been one of the hardest measures to get going. And the fact that there are trees in the ground and there are trees growing there right now just feels like we've come so far on a good amount of funding from the SERP. So that's $2 million in the SERP for each one of those. I would say another measure that I'm really proud of is a measure that wasn't in your SERP originally, which is the residential air filtration free distribution to residents. And I'm so proud of it because it feels like it's such a different, it feels like, why didn't we think of it a little bit? And it's going really well. And one of the things I'll also say is there's so much more there, and I think there are so many people we haven't yet reached with that measure, so I'll kind of tag that also into the challenge that I think we have. If you got a chance to walk around the room, I'd say we have a little less than half that we've even distributed. So we have a lot to distribute and a lot that we want to work with you on how to make sure folks, residents, households take advantage and get that, especially, I have to do this every time, if there's any wildfires this year. That's really important. And I think some of the measures, I think we have a lot of work to do. There are measures around this room that have zero that we've spent, right? Like there are measures around this room that we have some work to do on. There were some folks that were here that could answer maybe a little bit deeper of the questions, but those measures include yard trucks. You'll see that in there. We've spent $0. That's a little bit more like direct outreach to some businesses in the area that we at the district need to work on, and I certainly think our business partners can help us. And then I also think one of the measures, you're right, I only listed 2 that I'm proud of. Maybe I'll just finish with a couple of measures that we have to do and I'll go back. But I also think a couple of measures that we have work to do, but we're close and I can't wait for it to happen, are the 2 that are related to passenger vehicles, because those are also so important to you, and that also took a really long time, and that's free repair and replace. So replacing an older vehicle with a new electric or hybrid electric. So I think those are the measures where we have a lot of work to do, but we feel like we're almost there, but that it's going to still take a lot. And then, sorry, back to, I'm very proud of also, kind of back to the air filtration, there was a lot of progress made and a lot of you were a part of, I'll just maybe combine two more, schools. And Naimeen's nodding because we used to have a school subcommittee, if you guys remember this, right? We brought the trustees, we talked about how the school, especially Fresno Unified, we had all this funding for them and they weren't taking advantage. Well, we can now say that Fresno, Central, and Fowler Unified have all done electric buses that are going to operate in the boundary. And we've gotten all of the Fresno Unified schools to take school air filtration and install them in all of the schools, 31 schools in the boundary. So I'm so excited, proud of this group, and honestly would not have happened. That's one of, I think, the biggest benefits of this is the work you all did to bring the trustees, to you all from the community, talk to them, I think really made that happen. So thanks, Eric, for the question, but I encourage you in your time, ask Ryan, ask a few of us around, because I'm sure each one of us has a little different perspective. Thanks.
Yo tengo una pregunta. Me gustaría saber el por qué Fresno Unified tiene menos unidades. Si es que no hubo ya fondos suficientes o no aceptaron más camiones.
Great question. Sometimes when it comes to replacing of school buses, it's a matter of how old the current buses are and the routes that they take. So that was just a matter, there is, actually, I need to double check over there. I think we might have run out of funding. Yeah, so this is one of those though, we keep talking to the school districts and any measure, by the way, we've run out of funding, we're still engaging folks to see the interest because as you all know, one of our discussions tonight, there can be opportunity to shift funds if we find that there's still more available. From my understanding, I don't know that there were a ton more buses that they were interested in. However, if we keep connecting with them, find out that they would be interested if there was more funding, we would let you all know. I think that's a really great point.
What would be the process to determine how and when you recommend changing funding?
Did you hear that? Did you want that?
Maybe this is later in the agenda, but you know I love to jump into things. So when and how we will engage in a process as CSC members to potentially recommend reallocation of funding like we have done, for instance, with urban greening?
Great question, and I'll just add that tonight is one of those. We will have a discussion here in a few minutes about reallocation of funding to support residential lawn and garden. And I think this is the first step, is hearing kind of some feedback. I also have talked to a few of you, talked to some of my staff. They already told me, hey, someone had an idea, maybe we do reallocate. So we start there and hear from you. At the same time, we report out to you, just like last meeting where Ryan went through everything that we kind of where we stood with the budget, and we started to propose and kind of see what you all felt. And then we're taking this meeting to get feedback and build consensus on moving that funding. So I see in our eyes, that's the process. And so right now, even hearing the school bus question, we can go back with our staff. We don't want to move funding and find out no one wants to do it either, because sometimes that can be frustrating for us. But hearing that, we can already start to bring back. I envision that the next several meetings will do a lot of what we're doing tonight, where we talk about measures, talk about progress, and shift funding with your support as needed.
One more thing on the electric school buses. So while we have funding with the AB 617 program, both the federal government and the state have also allocated a lot of money towards the replacement. And so I know I will look into this and see where Fresno Unified is, but a lot of school districts, for example, have taken the CEC and the federal government have funding for that as well. So it may be a mixture of AB 617 funding, maybe some other funding. So there may be more buses that are coming to Fresno, but that'll be definitely something that we look into, so that way we can provide that information. In addition to opportunity for reallocating funding to other measures, or to this measure.
And I wonder, just to wrap all that up, I wonder if at Harder & Company, can we write as an action item to explore what Ryan just asked? kind of just see how the universe, the district will look at what the electric bus is in the boundary, whether it's paid for by us or others, just to ground truth that. So that way we can report back to you all at the next meeting.
Is there another microphone, or is it just because I like to hear staff response too?
Check, check. Check, check, check. Can you hear me? Thank you.
Yes. So relative to public fleet vehicles, I guess, can you, is this in response to the change in language? Is this in response to LAFCO's emergency management plan for the city?
This is Jessica. Sorry, I'm used to on Zoom having to announce my name. You all know who I am. Wow, that's a good habit I've ingrained. No, this is in response to trying to expand the universe of things that we can fund within the boundary because there's 8 million, well, a couple things is one, we're going to have specific discussions on this in a minute, and maybe this is a good segue so that some of the staff that know more about this can help answer. But this is really in response to, there's a measure in your SERP that we collectively allocated $8 million for public fleet vehicles. And that can be passenger vehicles. It can also be like UTVs at a school site or golf carts and a variety of other kind of smaller things. $8 million is a lot to spend on a, slow down. Sorry? Oh, thank you. Check, check. Can you hear me? Sorry. It's a lot to spend on a lot of small things when we have sort of a shortened timeline, and we've done a lot of outreach, and if you've noticed, we've done a handful of vehicles, but we feel like we're proposing to you not to change and not target those, but just to expand the universe of other types of vehicles that we can fund. So that's why it's just a broader list of types of vehicles we can fund and do broader outreach to the city that's not just targeting small vehicles, but maybe in this case, fire trucks, other emergency vehicles. It sounds like what you just mentioned, Eric, I'm not familiar with, and maybe we can learn from you a little bit about that too and how that plays out. I'm wondering if we can have that discussion in the small groups we're about to break out into with that staff, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and I guess like I know you mentioned a small handful of vehicles you've dispersed. It says that you've done 7, but you can do up to 393 vehicles. Looking at the comparative analysis of the impact in the program, I'd be curious to learn how fluid the program is relative to only selecting public agencies, but also being inclusive of nonprofits that provide a public good. So within the footprint, so within the footprint, you have an organization like the Boys and Girls Club that has a fleet of, 5, 15 passenger vans that maybe 3 are not in service, 2 are, could stand some repair. How this program can be a benefit to some of our nonprofits within the footprint that are providing a public good.
This is a really good point. I wonder where I'll just broadly answer, but in that discussion, I'm going to tag the team to think about that. We sort of have an opportunity, just as a reminder, we're talking about rewriting the project plan, and that is something that we give to CARB, where we collectively outline what the universe of vehicles are. And so right now it's written in such a way that's like pretty directly mirroring a current program which just targets public agencies. But what Eric's bringing up is, while we're expanding, why not think of other types of expansions? And I think that's a great point. So if there's no other questions about urban greening or what we're doing today, I wonder if I can pass to Harder to break us out and do the discussion.
I have one more question. I know we're going to go.
Is it related to that exact thing?
It is not.
Okay, thank you.
It's related to enforcement.
Perfect. Do we have a little bit of time, or should we do it at the end? Do you mind if we save it for like general comments at the end so we can get to the rest of the agenda?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing that question. So at this time, we're going to be splitting into two groups for our remaining two CERT measures for the evening. We were wondering maybe if this table would be so kind as to move here for this station in the evening. And then if these two tables could move back here as well. And I'm so sorry, AD team, we are going to graciously ask you to shift. And at this time, we also want to make sure that we have our interpretation set up as we're going to be shifting some things with that for our final two CERT measures of the evening. Okay. So we're going to take a brief intermission here and pick back up in a couple of minutes. All right, it looks like our groups are wrapping up for the evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for your robust conversation and honest feedback about this conversation, about these CERP measures. For these last few moments of our evening tonight, we just would love to share a couple of, next steps, as well as check in about our upcoming meeting items. I'll pause for our interpretation team. All right, thank you so much. So yes, thank you so much, everyone, each and every one of you, for your time tonight. As we approach our end of the meeting, we would just like to take a moment to remind folks of a couple of upcoming items on our radars. So this said there's an upcoming Community Clean Air Day on June 22nd at the Fresno Convention Center that the AD would love to put on your radars. We also want to remind folks for our upcoming June meeting on Wednesday, June 12th at 5:30 p.m. As a reminder, we have transitioned away from our typical agenda setting meetings for this CSC. That said, we would love to just take a moment to invite folks to share any updates around items that you would like to see mentioned in upcoming meetings. So if there are any recommendations for upcoming pieces, would love to hear that.
Yes. So I don't know if staff is listening, but the process that we just underwent, and I know Naimeen is somewhere in the room. Well, I don't know where she went though. But I think she brings up a really good point because while I recognize the facilitation group helped to navigate these particular conversations at the different tables, I know the first item, our table initially voted against the item, but when we asked if we would be able to amend the motion to make it more broad, we were advised by the facilitation group no. And then when I walked over to the other group to listen to the other conversation, they had a very similar course of action. They also voted the item down, but the facilitator, when one of the CSC resident members, organizational members, called into question, can we make our own motion and go forward with a different recommendation? The facilitator said yes. This is your process. These are your rules. But the same standard was not applied to the other group. So what I'm calling into question is the integrity of the process when you segregate two groups for the intention of one vote. We are not getting the same information and we're not getting the same opinions from our colleagues to where we can make an objective vote on the item. And so when you segregate to integrate and bring us all back into the room, you're going to have two different conversations from our groups, and there could be potentially two different actions. And if the Air District is asking for a recommendation on how to proceed forward with an item to implement, there's no parity in that. And so for me, that's concerning when we talk about being one body, right? Because I love to hear Naomi made excellent points. Her group was very focused on the same issues that we were focused on. And so for us to not be able to share that or hear that in this space is really concerning for me, being a CSC resident member, but also calling into question the integrity of the facilitation group.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you.
Because what I was referencing was when we asked if we could. When we asked if we can amend the motion to take further action, we were advised that we could not. But when the other group started, it was, this is your process, you guide this, these are your rules, I'm only here to facilitate. That same standard was not applied to the first group. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thank you for bringing that up, Eric. And so I just want to clarify the process that I implemented for full transparency and accountability. So in the second group, by the time I got to the second group, I summarized the theme from the first group. There was consensus on the same issues. In fact, the same exact recommendations were provided from both roundtables. So there is 100% discrepancy in like being able to hear everyone share the same sentiment. And so when I gave the power back to you all, in this case to that table, it was about being able to then provide these recommendations. So the vote was still held in that the vote that was on the table, both groups voted for it. What was added was now you guys all have a consensus rule that you all can provide recommendations from the Air District. There wasn't a discrepancy in what Table B, let's call it, recommended from Table A, and that is what I introduced. I could not say those same exact words here because you were the first table that I heard from. So I couldn't say that there's consensus from everyone at the meeting tonight. That was definitely new, and that is miss in having the segregated groups because then you don't get to hear the consensus from everyone in the room tonight. So that was the only new process. It wasn't that you can't introduce something new. All of it was recorded, and now the recording and input from both groups are provided as a consensus, not a vote, a consensus input for the Air District to try to implement and do whatever it is that you all have agreed on.
Acerca de esto que está pasando, algo bueno hubiera sido que pues se discutió el mismo tema en las dos mesas. ¿Por qué no haberlo presentado a todos? Primero una cosa y luego la otra, y se había hecho el voto igual, para haber escuchado todos juntos y se hubiera haber evitado este pequeño inconveniente. Esa es una sugerencia mía. Pues se
Gracias.
toma al mismo tiempo de todos modos.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the things we try to learn, what's successful in different communities, and then we try to transfer it to the different meetings. And so the process that we went through here was something that has been successful in other communities. And I think after going through the experience today, I think for Fresno, we would definitely not look to break out the groups into separate, and then we would just have a conversation with everybody all at once. Because we definitely don't want that situation where people feel like the process was different for one group versus another. I hear you, Eric. So that's definitely a change that we'll commit to any future meetings in person. We won't do something like that. But it has been successful in other communities, and so that's why we tried it here. It wasn't successful, so we have to learn, and we never stand up here and say we're perfect. It's us trying to do right by all of you, and so the expectation that you've outlined for us, we're going to take that, and we're going to make changes to how we do it.
Yeah, I just want to echo what was already said, which was that the process in and of itself could have worked if it had been the same applied to both groups. And so when the other team came over to this particular setup, they came with a new motion with recommendations. And so what we had asked for was that our recommendations be included, and what we were told was, no, we need to vote on what's present and what we put together. So that difference in what we actually were able to vote on and how much input we were able to provide is what is being discussed. And so the process in and of itself could have worked. We just need to be applying it in the same ways.
I think this was already said, but the suggestion would be, I understand the thought process behind kind of smaller groups, right, to allow for conversation. But I do think maybe the voting should happen at the end with everyone back kind of having this discussion so that there is room for amending, right? And I think that the conversation that we had at our table was really about, we didn't want to wait another month or two before we actually got to making the recommendation that at least there was consensus in our group around, and then it sounds like there was consensus in the second group as well. So maybe just tweaking the process for next time that we can discuss, right, in groups, and then find where are the areas of agreement, and then be able to either vote down on a recommendation and then present, right, an alternative that then the whole group can discuss and make sure that we're voting on the same thing.
Any other questions, comments, reflections?
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, so I think we asked, at least in the table that I was part of, when can we discuss reallocation that might be needed for other strategies? There were several community members in our table that expressed that they want to recommend more funding for the school buses, especially in light of what they noticed that, for example, in the Fresno Unified schools, they're having only 6 buses compared to 8 to Fowler. And the size of Fowler, Unified, and Fresno, are not comparable. So we would like to see that, hopefully, the next agenda. I also would like to know, when can we discuss more about, I asked this question in the room enforcement section. So I think last year, I believe maybe August or whenever, Genevieve had facilitated that meeting when we talk about, the warehouses and all that, and the topic of the indirect source rule came up. And back then, there was a pending lawsuit in the South Coast proposed indirect source rule, but that has been resolved since. So we are very concerned because no matter AB 617, the city in particular continues to permit warehouses. We're in the middle of an expansion of a highway where we would certainly see many more warehouses. So I think this is a topic that is of extremely relevance to the AB 617 community. So I don't want to speak for everybody, but at least for me and the community members that we represent, we strongly recommend that we bring this to the table, and that the response that I got from the staff member who was back then there said that they are maybe considering it, but in a very vague way and not with a precise timeline or anything. So I want to suggest and recommend that that's something that becomes part of the enforcement strategies that we have there.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just one other thing relative, I thought, to the conversation and the final vote in terms of how you reallocate dollars to maximize and benefit community. I think the other group had a great idea that was rejected by staff, which was how you can support small businesses, but more importantly, how can you support micro businesses through your grants program. Looking at the idea of whether you are the Ilota man or the Palada man and you're riding a bicycle, right? Having an electric bike program for those small vendors to purchase new equipment, or if you are the brother barbecuing on the corner with coal, right? Or charcoal, excuse me, and you want to transition to an electric grill. That should be a part of the innovation that comes from this air district to meet the diverse needs of this community.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. With that, would love to hear, any other lingering comments, feedback, questions. Yes.
I think just to add to Nayamin's comment, I think something that has been in discussion has been like land use and how like the city continues to push a lot of industrial facilities in the area. But I think there really needs to be the land use subcommittee, because the separation of agencies, I feel like, is really just harming the health of a lot of residents, where like there's no coordination. So I just really want to push for the land use subcommittee to be a thing again.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. We really, really appreciate each of this really valuable, important feedback and questions that we're hearing in this space. We're hearing, to summarize, what I heard was a lot of feedback around the process. How do we make sure that all folks are receiving the same amount of information, having the same access to the process, to change, to shifts, to amend, to not amend, to really make that process clear, to make sure that everyone gets also to hear the other thoughts, questions, concerns from other groups in the same CSC, to make sure that we're all on the same page. I also heard this question around how do we reallocate dollars to maximize community impact, recognizing the unique needs of community members and businesses, whether small businesses or micro businesses as well. And I heard the bring back the land use subcommittees as well. So thank you, each of you, for sharing that really valuable feedback. And we really believe that this will make our Fresno CSC space much more conducive and impactful, because each of you have taken time out of your busy schedules to be here. And so we just want to honor that, and thank you so much for that. And thank you for giving us this feedback and really valuable questions that we can continue to be processing and thinking through in the coming days and weeks and months. With that, we recognize the time, and also I want to be mindful that I believe, Eric, did you have a question earlier on in the meeting that we said we would come back to at the end of our time here tonight?
It was around enforcement, looking at the final status report from the Air District, the number of times that they survey an area for enforcement twice a year or twice a calendar month. My question was really centered around the number of enforcement officers, and then two, how parallel to what we've said in the past around community education and community clinics to help meet the needs of residents and educating them on how to connect with enforcement if they see it in their community, because it's not like they can call 911. It's not like that 211 is referencing people to the Air District. So how is the Air District educating the community within the footprint on how to connect with their organization for enforcement needs? Because what I can tell you is I drive by the recycling center, and I've said this time and time again, and I'll see them crushing glass, and I know for a fact that that's a violation, but I'll go make the call to the Air District, and I don't get a confirmation that my complaint was lodged. I don't get an email saying we've received your complaint. So I think looking at the ladder of enforcement, how is the Air District, one, educating the community? Two, how does the community receive reassurance that their complaints are being heard?
So to answer the question on the outreach, and I know you know this, we have the outreach subcommittee. And so we have a lot of community, like a lot of the CSC members have been attending that and providing input on opportunities to engage and talk about that very issue. And so, we're continuing to take the feedback, and we've been attending more community events. And those are some of the things, those exact things we're explaining to them is how can they file complaints? What's the process? What to expect when they do file a complaint? And we provide them those educational, and then we also provide materials to them as well.
I think where I'm going with it is, how is the Air District identifying trusted messengers in those communities to pull in the population?
Yeah.
The people that need to be filing the grievances because they see it day to day in their neighborhoods. How is the Air District connecting with organizations like BAC or Black Women or Black Wellness and Prosperity Center to educate specific populations within the community?
Well, the other thing that we have, if there are communities, like we look for partners. And so if there are people that are willing to partner with us and do more outreach, like you mentioned, the trusted members of the community, we are very open to, working with them to do a grant so that we could work with them to, firsthand deliver that information. So if you know of community organizations that want to do that or are interested in doing that, please send them our way, and we'd be happy to engage with them and look to do more of that.
Let me see a question. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I just have one more thought about, overall, we've talked about, changing allocation, and it's certainly easier to move individuals to change what they're doing and to replace lawnmowers. My concern is that we are doing the smaller issues with which we know will provide a less, smaller reduction. And so if we're not going to push on those bigger entities with the backing of the state, who do we expect to do that work? How are we ever going to get them to pivot? And I know that, this is not designed to be, quote, enforcement. But again, if we're not using this as leverage and we're not doing something different, but we're always shifting back to, it's easier to go to individuals, it's easier to have, these events where we trade out lawnmowers and we do air filtration in residents' homes. But those are not still going to get us where we need to go. So what's our plan for really, utilizing this AB 617 in a way that really does change and really does get some reduction?
Yeah. One of the main primary purposes of AB 617 was to get this early action, get things going, get people to transition to cleaner equipment faster, businesses, other things, cities, counties, transition to cleaner equipment. Fortunately, at the same time, the state is, California has been the most aggressive in terms of putting out requirements that businesses are going to have to, transition their equipment to cleaner equipment. So that's going to happen no matter what. And so AB 617 is a tool and a means for people to have the opportunity to get funding to do it faster. But if they don't get funding, and they're still going to be required to do it. So there is positive things that are going to happen no matter what. And, nothing is stopping us. Like, we want to see all these early action things happen. And, we're aggressively trying to go out and find partners to do it. The kind of frustration or the disappointment is we thought technology would be a lot further along by this time. I think COVID played a significant role in slowing down the development of a lot of this equipment that we were hoping that would be readily available. Anybody could just go out and buy one. Fresno Unified would be able to go out and buy an electric bus and get it delivered tomorrow. But right now we're seeing it's still 12 to 18 months because so many of them have been reserved. And so some of those are the real challenges with the getting the businesses to do those things. And so I think there's still opportunity. I'm hopeful. I don't want anybody to get discouraged. That these things are going to happen and that you're going to see tangible, real air quality improvements in this community.
Thank you, Dr. Curry. Thank you, everyone, for these valuable questions, this valuable feedback, your time. With that, I know we have one final lingering update from the UC Davis team, and then I believe that will conclude our meeting.
Thanks. Hi, everyone, those who are remaining. Just really briefly, met many of you, but Jonathan London from UC Davis, and with my team here, Ethan and Peter, been doing research on AB 617 the last 6 years. Last bit of it was with Naimeen and company, and we have policy briefs on the table up front in both English and Spanish. So if you didn't get one on the way in, please take one on the way out, and then we can also send them to, I don't know if it's the district or Harder & Co. Can send that out to everybody, both in English and Spanish. So want to make sure you take a party favor home with you. Good late night reading.
Thank you. Well, with that, thank you, everyone. This officially concludes our 65th South Fresno Community Steering Committee meeting. If we can give each of us just a hand for our time and commitment to having these really important conversations. Thank you, each of you. And we know it's late, so if you haven't already, please take some leftovers with you home. I think we have leftovers. Do we have leftovers? Yes. As an extra treat for your time. And thank you so much. Safe travels home.